The gates of Fort Branson training camp didn't open like a welcome. They groaned. A long, heavy metal sound echoed across the dusty grounds as the new recruits were marched inside. It wasn't just noise, it felt like a warning, like the place itself was saying, "Turn back while you still can." Inside, rows of soldiers in training stood under the burning morning sun. The air was sharp with heat, sweat, and tension. Everything here felt controlled, strict, unforgiving. No music, no comfort, no softness. Only discipline and failure. Standing among the new arrivals was Private Emma Carter. She wasn't the tallest, not the loudest, not the one people instinctively looked at twice. If anything, she blended in too easily, like someone trying not to be noticed. But in a place like this, being unnoticed was dangerous. Because in Fort Branson, silence didn't protect you. It isolated you. A group of recruits nearby glanced at her as they adjusted their gear. One of them smirked. "She looks like she took the wrong bus." A few chuckles followed. Another added quietly, "She won't last long here." Emma heard them. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't care, but because she understood something they didn't yet know. Words didn't matter here. Only outcomes did. A sharp whistle cut through the air. "Formation," a voice roared. Sergeant Hale stepped forward. He was built like the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Every movement he made looked precise, controlled, and final. His eyes scanned the recruits like a scanner reading weakness. "Welcome to Fort Branson," he said coldly. "You are here because someone thinks you have potential." A pause. "But I don't deal in potential." Silence tightened across the group. "I deal in results." He began walking slowly in front of them. "This camp does not break everyone, it exposes them. The weak don't survive, the distracted don't survive, the arrogant don't survive." He stopped. "And most of you don't survive." That sentence landed like a weight. Emma didn't move, didn't flinch, but she listened differently than the others. While most heard a threat, she heard a system, a structure, rules. And where there are rules, there are patterns. The first test came without warning. Gear UP, 5-mile run, full load. No warm-up. No preparation time. Just instant pressure. Recruits scrambled. Heavy boots, bulletproof vests, packs loaded with weight that felt twice as heavy as expected. Then, GO. The entire unit surged forward like a released wave. Dust exploded under their boots. The first mile was chaos. The fastest recruits pushed ahead aggressively, trying to establish dominance early. The middle group settled into rhythm. The weaker ones immediately began to struggle. Emma. She stayed near the back. Not because she was giving up, but because she was observing. She watched breathing patterns, stride lengths, who started too fast, who would collapse first, who was wasting energy. The human body always revealed the truth if you knew how to read it. By mile 2, the first collapse happened. A recruit dropped to one knee, gasping. "Keep moving," someone shouted as they passed him. By mile 3, sweat turned into exhaustion. The early leaders started slowing down. Their confidence began to crack. Mile 4 was where reality hit. The ones who sprinted early were now barely jogging. Emma remained steady. Not fast. Not slow. Consistent. Unshakable. A recruit passing her looked confused. "You're still back here," he gasped. Emma didn't even look at him. Yes. That was it. No emotion. No explanation. Just truth. Mile 5. The finish line came into view. Now it was no longer about strength. It was about survival of packing. The first group collapsed near the line, falling into the dirt like their bodies had finally given permission. The middle group crossed exhausted, barely standing. Emma crossed last. Not slightly last. Clearly last. Far behind. A few recruits who had already recovered started laughing. Unbelievable. She's actually worse than I thought. One shook his head. How is she even here? Sergeant Hale stood near the finish, clipboard in hand. He didn't react to the laughter. Didn't encourage it either. He simply marked something down. Then looked at Emma. Private Carter. Yes, Sergeant. Last place. Yes, Sergeant. No excuses. No defense. No emotion. That bothered people more than failure itself. Because she wasn't reacting the way a weak recruit was supposed to react. She wasn't angry. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't broken. She was neutral. And neutrality in a place like this was unusual. That night the barracks were loud with exhaustion. Some recruits complained. Some joked. Some slept instantly. Emma didn't. She sat on her bunk quietly, reviewing the training schedule posted on the wall. Physical drills, combat simulations, team coordination exercises, endurance cycles. Every detail mattered. She studied not just what was happening, but how it was structured. Then she noticed something. The system wasn't random. The difficulty wasn't chaotic. It escalated in predictable cycles. Fatigue patterns were being tested. Decision-making under exhaustion. Recovery speed. Mental stability under pressure. This wasn't just training. It was measurement. A map. And suddenly, Emma understood something important. She wasn't competing with other recruits. She was competing with a system designed to break them in layers. At 02:17 a.m. she stood up. Quietly, carefully, she tightened her boots and left the barracks. Outside, the cold air hit her instantly. The camp was silent, except for distant guards and wind brushing through dry grass. Emma began to run. Alone. No instructor. No audience. No stopwatch. Just darkness. At first, her legs burned immediately, still recovering from the earlier punishment. But she didn't stop. Because she wasn't trying to prove anything. She was trying to understand something deeper. How long can the body suffer before it adapts? How much pain is noise, and how much is signal? Step after step, her breathing stabilized. The pain didn't disappear. It reorganized. It became background. Like static you eventually stop hearing. She ran until the sky began to lighten. Until her shadow stretched across the ground. Until the first signs of morning appeared over the training field. When she returned to the barracks, no one noticed. No applause. No recognition. Just silence. But something had changed. Not outside. Inside. Because while everyone else had been sleeping, Emma had started learning how to survive the system. And systems always had weaknesses. The sun rose over Fort Branson training camp like it always did, unbothered, unchanged, indifferent to the struggles unfolding below it. But for the recruits, nothing about that morning felt normal anymore. Something had shifted. Not in the environment. In perception. Because word spreads fast in a place like this. And by sunrise, people already knew one thing. Private Emma Carter had finished last, again. But they also knew something else. She had been seen running at night. Alone. which in military training meant only two things. Either you were breaking or building something no one understood yet. And most people chose the simpler explanation. "She's trying too hard," one recruit said while tightening his boots. "Or she's just lost," another replied. A third laughed. "Doesn't matter, last place is last place." Across the barracks, Emma sat quietly, cleaning her gear. No reaction. No frustration. No attempt to defend herself. But her eyes were different now. Not tired. Not discouraged. Focused. Like someone watching a clock tick down to something only she could see. Morning drill, the first crack. The whistle blew sharply. Formation move. Today's training was different. Not announced. Not explained. Just executed. Recruits were forced into high-intensity combat drills, sprint, breach, clear and reposition exercises under timed pressure. Everything had to be fast, clean, precise. Mistakes were punished immediately with penalty runs. Sergeant Hale stood at the center, arms folded, watching everything unfold like a judge waiting for truth to reveal itself. "Speed matters," he called out, "but control matters more." The first squad moved in. They were sharp, confident, too confident. They rushed the entry. One hesitation inside the simulated structure. Beep, error, failure. Reset 10 push-ups again. Groans echoed. Next group tried to compensate by slowing down. Too cautious. Too late. Failure. Sergeant Hale didn't react. He just watched. Waiting. Then, next unit. Emma's group stepped forward. Immediate whispers. "Watch this one mess it up again. Just follow her and we'll fail slower." Emma heard none of it. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't allow it to enter her focus. "Ready," Hale shouted. The simulation doors opened. Go. Her squad moved. Fast. Too fast for expectation. The lead recruit burst forward aggressively. But Emma didn't follow blindly. She watched the structure, the corners, the timing of the simulated guards. Then, "Wait," she said sharply. Too late. The lead recruit ignored her and pushed inside. Beep, flash, simulation hit, failure. The squad froze. The recruit turned angrily. "You slowed me down." Emma stepped forward calmly. "No, you rushed the trigger pattern." Silence. A few recruits nearby laughed. "Now she's blamming strategy," someone muttered. Sergeant Hale raised an eyebrow. "Continue." Emma didn't argue. She just adjusted her position. Reset, same run. Confusion rippled. But orders were orders. Again. "Ready, Go." This time Emma moved first. Not forward, but sideways. Tracking angles. Reading timing. Her squad followed reluctantly. Inside the simulation zone, chaos began again. But Emma wasn't reacting to chaos. She was predicting it. 2 steps ahead. Then 3. "Left corridor clear in 4 seconds," she said. "Move now." They hesitated. She didn't. She moved. The squad followed instinctively. The timing was perfect. A simulated enemy passed the exact point she predicted. No contact. No trigger. They moved deeper. Second checkpoint. "Stop," a recruit whispered. "That's a trap zone." Emma didn't look at him. "It's a decoy." She turned slightly. "Real entry point is above left corridor. They want us funneled." Silence. "How do you know that?" someone asked. Emma finally answered. Because this pattern repeats every 3 cycles. The group hesitated again, but hesitation was already costing them time. "Move," she ordered quietly. And they did. Within minutes, they cleared the structure. Clean extraction. No failures. No penalties. Just silence when they exited. Because for the first time, their performance wasn't average. It was perfectly executed. Sergeant Hale looked down at the scoreboard, then back at Emma. He didn't speak, but his expression changed slightly. Not approval. Not praise. Something closer to curiosity. The shift begins. But not everyone saw it that way. Inside the barracks that night, tension started forming. "You think you're better than us now," one recruit said while cleaning his weapon. Emma didn't look up. "I don't think anything. That's not what it looked like out there." Another recruit added, "You took control without permission." Emma finally paused, then replied calmly, "I prevented failure." The room went quiet. But silence in a military camp is never peaceful. It's just pressure waiting to explode. A recruit stood up. "You got lucky once, and now you're acting like a leader." Emma looked at him. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just observing. "No," she said, "I adapted." That word landed heavier than expected. Because adaptation implied something uncomfortable. Improvement. Growth. Change. And people don't like being reminded they are not changing fast enough. The recruit scoffed. "You're still last in physical performance." Emma nodded once. "Yes." That honesty made it worse. Because she wasn't denying it. She wasn't defending it. She was acknowledging it like it didn't define her. And that unsettled people more than arrogance ever could. The instructors watch. Outside, Sergeant Hale reviewed the training logs. Every detail. Every timing record. Every failure pattern. And every improvement spike. Emma Carter's name kept appearing in the same strange pattern. Physical ranking, last. Decision accuracy, top 3%. Tactical prediction, highest improvement curve in unit. He leaned back slightly. "This doesn't make sense," another instructor said behind him. "She's inconsistent," Hale replied. "Or she's learning differently," the instructor suggested. Hale didn't answer immediately. Then, "No," he said quietly. "She's learning faster than her body can catch up." A pause. "That's dangerous." The breaking test. The next exercise was unannounced. Full unit simulation, night operation. Darkness training. Low visibility. High stress. Real-time decision pressure. Recruits were divided into teams and dropped into a simulated hostile terrain environment. No maps. No guidance. Only instincts. And failure meant immediate reset. Emma stood with her unit as the lights dimmed. One recruit muttered, "If we fail again, it's because of her." Emma didn't respond. Because she wasn't thinking about blame. She was thinking about survival probability. The simulation began. And instantly, everything changed. Noise replaced structure. Darkness replaced clarity. Confusion replaced coordination. "Where are we going?" someone shouted. "I can't see anything." "Stay together." Panic spread quickly. Emma raised her voice once. "Stop." It wasn't loud, but it cut through panic like a blade. Silence followed. "Listen carefully," she said. "We move in silence, no rushing, no assumptions." A recruit snapped, "Why should we listen to you?" Emma didn't hesitate. Because panic gets you eliminated first. That answer wasn't emotional. It was statistical, and that made it harder to argue against. They moved. Slowly, carefully. Emma led from slightly behind, not to dominate but to observe. Every movement, every mistake, every reaction pattern. Then she stopped. Wait. Everyone froze. What now? Someone whispered. Emma looked ahead. There's a blind zone ahead. How do you know? She pointed slightly. Wind direction changed. That means structural movement. Something is placed there to force reaction. They hesitated. Then, a sudden simulated flash triggered ahead. Exactly where she predicted. If they had moved, they would have failed instantly. The group went silent. No jokes. No arguments. Just realization. One recruit whispered, "How did you see that?" Emma finally answered something different this time. "I didn't see it. I recognized it." The sky over Fort Branson training camp looked heavier that morning. Not because of weather. Because of expectation. Something in the air had shifted after the night operation simulation. People didn't talk the same way anymore. They didn't joke as freely. Even the laughter in the barracks felt controlled now, like everyone was waiting for something to confirm what they were starting to suspect. And the subject of that suspicion was always the same. Private Emma Carter. She stood in formation like she always did. Still, quiet, unshaken, but no longer invisible. Now people looked at her longer than necessary. Not with mockery anymore. With calculation. Because mockery is easy when you believe someone is beneath you. But calculation begins when you're not sure anymore. The new assignment. Sergeant Hale stepped forward holding a sealed file. "Today's exercise is different," he announced. No one moved. Live field simulation, multi-unit coordination, real-time extraction scenario. A pause. This is not a drill, this is a performance test. The words landed heavier than usual. Even the most confident recruit straightened slightly. Hale continued. "You will operate in mixed units, unknown terrain, limited communication, failure rate historically 68%. A few recruits exchanged looks. That number wasn't comforting. It was warning. Then he said it. Leadership positions will not be assigned. Silence. They will be taken. That changed everything. Because it meant only one thing. This exercise wasn't about following orders. It was about who naturally becomes followed when chaos begins. The field drop. The transport vehicles arrived without ceremony. No music. No motivational speech. Just doors opening. Move. They were dropped into a wide training zone that looked like abandoned industrial terrain, collapsed structures, broken pathways, scattered elevation points. Everything designed to confuse orientation. Emma adjusted her gear quietly. A recruit beside her muttered, "Try not to get us killed this time." She didn't respond. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood something simple. People who speak early in chaos usually stop speaking later. The signal came. Start. And everything exploded into motion. Chaos phase begins. Immediately, groups split. Some ran forward aggressively. Some hesitated. Some argued. Emma moved differently. She didn't sprint. She didn't freeze. She observed first movement behavior. Within seconds, she identified something others didn't. The terrain wasn't random. It was layered. 3 movement paths, each designed to test a different failure type. Speed without awareness, right arrow trap zones. Caution without movement, timed elimination. Group dependency, right arrow communication collapse. She exhaled slowly, then spoke. Don't follow the fastest group. A recruit snapped back. We don't take orders from you. Emma didn't look at him. That's fine, she said calmly, but don't say I didn't warn you. And she moved, not away from them, but toward a third path that almost no one noticed. A narrow corridor between two broken structures. Unremarkable, almost invitingly empty. Which meant one thing. It wasn't empty by accident. A few recruits hesitated, then followed her anyway. Not because they trusted her, but because the other options already looked worse. First contact with failure. 10 minutes in. First unit failure triggered. A loud signal echoed through the zone. Unit eliminated. A group that rushed forward blindly had hit a hidden simulation trigger zone. Too fast. Too loud. Too predictable. Emma didn't react. She just said one sentence. They went the obvious route. A recruit frowned, and we did. Emma finally looked at him. No. We went the ignored one. That sentence changed something in the group dynamic. Not trust. Not respect. But attention. Because attention is the first step before belief. The first leadership shift. As they moved deeper, communication systems started degrading as expected. Static interference. Limited range. Groups began splitting unintentionally. Panic started rising again. That's when it happened. A recruit from another unit ran into their path. Out of breath. Confused. Which direction extraction point? He shouted. No one answered immediately. Everyone looked at each other. Uncertainty spread fast. If they gave wrong direction, they could sabotage another unit. If they hesitated, they risked losing time. Emma stepped forward, pointed slightly left. 2 ridges ahead, then downslope extraction corridor. The recruit blinked. How do you know? Emma replied simply. Because that's where they want everyone to avoid going. He didn't understand. But he left. And one of Emma's teammates whispered. That might have been wrong. Emma didn't argue. She just said, it was, and continued moving. The pressure builds. Mid-simulation. The terrain changed. Narrow passages widened into open exposure zones. This was where most units failed. Exposure meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant collapse under simulated fire. The group slowed. Instinctively defensive now. One recruit finally said it. You're making all the calls again. Emma stopped briefly. Turned slightly. I'm not making calls. She paused. I'm reading the environment. Another recruit shook his head. That's the same thing. Emma replied instantly. No. One is authority. The other is survival. That distinction created silence, because no one had an easy argument against survival logic. The critical mistake point. They reached a split zone. 3 paths. Left, fast but exposed. Center, stable but heavily monitored. Right, unknown terrain. The group froze. This is where units fail, someone muttered. Another added, every direction looks bad. Emma stepped forward. For the first time, she didn't immediately choose. She studied all 3. Longer than usual. Something was different here. This wasn't pattern repetition. This was designed uncertainty. A test of leadership, not navigation. Then she said, We don't pick one. Confusion. What? We split control functions, she continued, not the team. A recruit frowned. That doesn't even make sense. Emma turned slightly. It does if you understand coordination under fragmentation. She assigned roles, not ranks. Functions. One observes movement patterns. One tracks timing intervals. One monitors environmental shifts. She maintains directional control. The group hesitated, then reluctantly followed. Because in chaos, structure feels safer than debate. The turning point. As they progressed, something unexpected happened. They started moving efficiently. Not perfectly, but coherently. Even under pressure. Even under uncertainty. One recruit finally admitted quietly, "This actually works." Another replied, "I don't know how she's doing it." Emma heard them, but didn't react, because she wasn't doing anything new. She was simply removing unnecessary randomness. And in military systems, randomness is what causes failure. Sergeant Hale's observation. Far above the field zone, inside the control station, Sergeant Hale watched everything through live feeds. Other instructors were talking. Unit efficiency increased by 41% in that group. That's impossible under this terrain load. She's coordinating without formal authority. Hale didn't respond immediately. He just watched Emma's movement pattern. Then he said quietly, "She's not leading them." A pause. "She's stabilizing them." That word mattered, because leaders give direction. But stabilizers prevent collapse. And stabilizers are harder to replace. Final phase begins. A loud system alert echoed. Final simulation phase active. The terrain shifted again. More pressure. More interference. More time compression. Now everything accelerated. Groups began breaking down across the field. But Emma's unit didn't collapse. They tightened. One recruit looked at her. "We're still intact." Emma replied, "For now." That honesty kept them alert. Not comfortable. Alert. And in survival environments, comfort is the first step toward failure. The final phase of the simulation began without warning. No countdown. No announcement. Just a sudden shift in the terrain systems and a sharp voice over the intercom. Final operation phase active. The atmosphere inside Fort Branson Training Zone changed instantly. What had been structured chaos before now became controlled pressure. Everything tightened. Time windows shortened. Movement penalties increased. Mistakes became irreversible. And for the first time in the entire training cycle, units weren't just being tested. They were being measured for command viability under collapse conditions. The collapse starts. Emma's unit moved into the final sector. The terrain was different here. More open. More exposed. Less predictable. A recruit looked around nervously. "This doesn't feel like training anymore." Another replied quietly, "It never did." Then it happened. A signal burst across all comm channels. Multi-unit breakdown DTCTD. Far across the field, other squads began failing in real time. Some got trapped in simulated ambush zones. Some lost coordination entirely. Some froze completely. And that's when panic started spreading, not just within units, but between them. Because chaos is manageable when it's isolated. But when it spreads, it becomes contagious. The critical moment. Emma stopped walking. Everyone noticed immediately. "Why are we stopping?" a recruit asked. Emma didn't answer right away. She was scanning, not the terrain, the system behavior. Then she spoke. This isn't a final exercise. A pause. This is a pressure collapse test. Confused silence. Another recruit frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Emma finally turned. It means they don't want us to complete it. They want to see who organizes failure. That statement hit differently, because it reframed everything. This wasn't about finishing. It was about surviving disintegration. Leadership fracture begins. Suddenly, a nearby unit ran into their path, disorganized, panicked. Extraction route is gone, one shouted. We're boxed in. Another yelled, we need new command structure. Their leader had failed. They were collapsing. And instinctively, they looked at Emma's unit. Take us with you, someone shouted. Emma didn't move immediately, because she understood the risk. Taking them meant slower movement, higher confusion risk, increased coordination failure probability. But ignoring them meant moral collapse across multiple units, systemic failure escalation. One recruit in her unit whispered, "We can't take responsibility for them." Another added, "It'll slow us down." All eyes shifted to Emma, not because she was the loudest, but because she was the only one who wasn't reacting emotionally. She calculated, then said, "We take them." Immediate protest. "What? That's insane." Emma raised her hand slightly, but under structure. She turned to the arriving unit. One rule: you follow instruction without deviation. One breach and separation is immediate. Silence. They agreed. Because at that moment, survival mattered more than pride. The system tightens. Now combined, the group moved forward. But pressure increased instantly. More interference signals. More simulated threats. Less margin for error. One recruit stumbled during movement coordination. Immediately, timing misaligned. Emma corrected it instantly. "Reset your spacing. You're compressing the formation." Another unit member snapped, "Stop micromanaging everything." Emma turned slightly. "I'm preventing collapse." That was all she said. And somehow, it was enough. Sergeant Hale enters the field control decision. Inside the control room, tension rose. An instructor spoke. Multiple units are stabilizing under her coordination. Another responded, "That's not standard behavior under this stress level." Hale didn't take his eyes off the monitor. Emma's group was now doing something unusual. They weren't just surviving. They were absorbing failing units and reorganizing them, like a system forming structure out of chaos. One instructor finally said it. "She's becoming a central node." Hale replied quietly, "No." A pause. "She's becoming a replacement structure." That statement changed the room. Because a replacement structure doesn't follow the system. It starts redefining it. The final barrier. The group reached the final extraction corridor. But it wasn't empty. It was deliberately designed to be the hardest possible segment. Wide exposure zone. Minimal cover. High simulated interception probability. One recruit whispered, "This is where we lose people." Emma stepped forward, looked ahead, then said, "No. This is where they see who leads under exposure." She turned slightly. "Stay aligned, no deviation." A recruit from the second unit asked, "And if it fails?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Then we adapt again." That wasn't confidence. That was structure. The breaking point of control. They moved in. Immediately, simulated threats activated. Flash indicators, movement disruptions, auditory confusion systems. Everything designed to destabilize coordination. A recruit panicked. "I can't see anything." Another shouted, "We're splitting." Emma's voice cut through it. "Don't react to signals, react to pattern timing." She adjusted movement flow instantly. Left shift, two-step delay now. They followed. Barely. But it worked. Then another wave hit. Harder. Faster. The combined unit started shaking under pressure. And for the first time, someone looked at Emma and said, "We can't hold this." Emma looked back and replied, "Then we don't hold it. We move it." That changed everything. The command shift. Emma stopped trying to maintain formation. Instead, she restructured it entirely. Not as a rigid unit, but as a flow system. Flexible positioning, rotational leadership cues, adaptive spacing based on threat signals. One recruit realized it first. She's not keeping us together. She's letting us move like one system. And suddenly, the chaos stopped feeling random. It started feeling managed. Sergeant Hale's final decision. In the control room, alarms stopped being important. Everyone was watching Emma now. Not the exercise. Not the failures. "Sir?" An instructor asked quietly. "What is she doing?" Hale answered without hesitation. "She's no longer participating. She's commanding the environment." A pause. Then he stood up slightly. "Begin final evaluation protocol." Final extraction moment. Back in the field, the exit zone appeared. But nothing was easy. Final interference wave activated. Visibility dropped. Communication systems collapsed entirely. Everything broke into silence. Now it was pure instinct. No guidance. No confirmation. Just movement. A recruit looked at Emma. "We're blind now." Emma replied, "Then don't use sight. Use structure." She raised her hand once, and the group moved. Not perfectly, but synchronized, like a single adaptive organism. Step by step, zone by zone, until the extraction signal triggered. Mission complete. Silence followed. Then confirmation. Across all systems. Unit stability, success. Multi-unit integration, success. Leadership under collapse, UNRANKED, EXCDSPARMETRS. The recognition. Back at Fort Branson, the recruits stood in formation again. But everything felt different now. Sergeant Hale stepped forward. He looked at the report, then at Emma, and for a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, Private Carter stepped forward. She did. The entire unit watched. No laughter this time. No whispers. Just attention. Hale spoke clearly. "You entered this training last in performance ranking." A pause. "You did not change your strength first. You changed your understanding." He closed the file. Effective immediately. Silence tightened. "You are promoted to Unit Leader of Delta Division." A shift in the air. Not shock anymore. Acceptance. Emma didn't react dramatically. She simply nodded once. Because she wasn't becoming something new. She was simply being recognized for what she had already become. A leader not by rank, but by function. Final scene. As the recruits dispersed, one of them quietly said, "I thought she was the weakest one." Another replied, "So did we all." Across the field, Emma walked with her unit behind her. Not above them, not in front of them in ego, but as the point where everything aligned. And Sergeant Hale, watching from behind, said quietly, "Some soldiers don't rise by competition. They rise by understanding what others can't see." And for the first time, Fort Branson didn't feel like it had broken someone. It felt like it had discovered something it didn't expect. A leader.